So the big buzz that's happening politically this week is that a lot of people, more so Democrat politicians and, of course, corporate media pundits, have been forthcoming about telling Joe Biden that he needs to step down. Now, many of us warned people about this years ago. I warned people about it during the 2020 Democrat primary debates that Joe Biden didn't seem to have it all upstairs. And I didn't think it was a good idea for people to be pushing Joe Biden. But here we are. Here we are. Now, James Carville, Nancy Pelosi, actually we'll save Nancy for a little bit later. James Carville, I believe Matt, Senator Bennett. Yeah. Okay. So James Carville, Senator Bennett. We'll get into the George Clooney thing. A number of people are coming forward to say that Joe Biden should step down. It seems as though all of a sudden some of Biden's most trusted people are turning their back on him. What a shame. First, we're going to start off with the Crypt Keeper himself, James Carville, coming out of the gate, letting people know this is not going to work.
Quoting now, "Mark my words," Carville said, "Joe Biden is going to be out of the 2024 presidential race, whether he's ready to admit it or not." James Carville joins us along with CNN political commentator Jamal Simmons, who served as deputy assistant to President Biden and communications director to Vice President Harris. James, do you stand still by what you said, or do you think President Biden has survived this crisis?
Well, I mean, you know, Cook moved 6 states away from Democrats. I watch some of these press conferences. It reminds me of a book they made me read in college called Ship of Fools. A bunch of desperate people sailing into disaster. And, you know, I just think that cowards have never beat criminals in a war yet. And the way that you beat criminals is not to be cowards, is to take it directly home. There's nothing that I see that remotely changes my mind or changes what I think about where we are.
But do you believe what you said, though, is different than what you said in that you said he's going to drop out. What you're saying is you seem now resigned to or upset about that basically they have capitulated.
No, I don't. And I think like Senator Patty Murray, who's been in the Senate for over 30 years, and the fact that she came out and said this speaks volumes as opposed to what people say in front of a camera. So I still think I'll stand by my thing that he won't run. But if he does, we're just making a idiotic choice for the future of our country. And I can't help but believe that. And the proof's in the pudding. They're moving states away from us. We're losing. We're not winning. And when we lose, America loses. It's that simple.
We're going to get to the states in the next part of the story. I'm breaking the story up into 2 parts, and I think you'll understand why. But we'll get to the states part in the next part of this story. You know, it's bad when someone like James Carville, who heavily advocated for Joe Biden, remember he spoke out against Bernie Sanders during the 2020 Democrat primary debate. He said, no, he's too far left, too radical. We need to go with someone like Joe Biden, who's right in the center, and he can work on both sides of the aisle. How many of you remember hearing that, like during the Dem primary debates, like Joe Biden can work on both sides of the aisle? I remember hearing that over and over again, but he was one of the people that heavily said we need to go with Joe Biden. And here he is now. James Carville has turned on Joe Biden. And apparently, Senator Bennett, who kind of reminds me of Mr. Mackey from South Park, his voice kind of sounds like that. You don't usually hear much from Senator Bennett, but he was also running for president at one point in 2020 during a Democrat primary, dropped out a little bit earlier on or whatever. But he is vocal about this here as he's confronted outside and actually decided to stop and talk to the supporters. And Senator Bennett is going to tell the reporters that he doesn't think that Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump. Very forthcoming about it.
I don't want to prejudge what they're going to say. We'll see. I think what's on everybody's mind is there a clear path to victory here? And can we honestly say that we're on a path to defeating Donald Trump and holding onto the Senate and holding onto the House of Representatives?
Do you believe that there is one with President Biden on the Democratic ticket?
What I've said is that I think that I think if things stay as they are, it's likely that Donald Trump will win the election and that we'll lose the Senate and we'll lose the House.
Okay. You guys remember Mr. Mackey on South Park? Okay. Yeah. So here is Senator Bennett telling you that if Joe Biden is on this ticket, the Democratic Party is going to lose to Donald Trump. You know, unlike some others, he is very vocal about it.
Are you watching the press conference tonight? Or
Sorry?
Are you watching the press conference tonight?
Of course.
Or does that matter?
No, yeah, everything matters. Everything matters.
Are you at a decision point here where you might make the move instead of just saying that you think that he'll lose, but that he should withdraw?
This is not a decision for me to make.
But if you called for him to withdraw, that would be a notable thing for you to say.
Let's have I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have, and I appreciate that we're going to have this conversation.
What do you wish Biden's not here? Thank you for stopping, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for stopping.
Thank you. Next time I'll get on the right side.
Okay. That's right. That's right, Danny. That's right, Janine. He can't win. Okay. Yeah. So that is Senator Bennett vocal about it. Again, I'm pretty sure Senator Bennett got the approval to do this kind of thing because he knows that he's not going to lose his seat by this, right? Obviously, there are a group of Democrat politicians that have gotten together and they said, we got to get this guy out of here. He is embarrassing us and he's embarrassing himself. There's no way we think this guy's going to beat Donald Trump. So a group of them decided to coalesce and get together. Someone mentioned in the chat that Glenn Greenwald said it's like a coup. That is what it seems like is happening. But then let's step outside of the political space for just a second, because then there was the statement from George Clooney, who obviously is not a politician, is a celebrity. And you had to just wonder for a second here, is this really coming from George Clooney? Is it really coming from him? Let's go ahead and bring this up here. George Clooney op-ed. I love Joe Biden, but we need a new nominee. Now here comes George Clooney just coming out of nowhere with this statement. That was not a good picture of Biden there. Listen to this. We'll jump to this part here. This is the part that cracks me up. I love Joe Biden as a senator. He loved him as a senator. I think we all remember some of the things Joe Biden said as a senator, some of the things that he did. Crime bill, anyone? As a vice president and as a president, I consider him a friend and I believe in him, believe in his character, believe in his morals. In the last 4 years, he's won many of the battles he's faced. But the one battle he cannot win is the fight against time. None of us can. It's devastating to say, but the Joe Biden I was with 3 weeks ago at the fundraiser was not the Joe big effing deal Biden of 2010. He wasn't even the Joe Biden of 2020. He was the same man we all witnessed at the debate. Let me just say something here. Do you notice what he just said? The Joe Biden I was with 3 weeks ago. George Clooney hosted a fundraiser for Joe Biden just 3 weeks ago. So he's not like Joe Biden 3 months ago or Joe Biden 3 years ago, just 3 weeks ago. He already sees a difference. He goes on to say here, was he tired? Yes. A cold? Maybe. But our party leaders need to stop telling us that 51 million people didn't see what we just saw. We're also terrified by the prospect of a second Trump term that we've opted to ignore every warning sign. The George Stephanopoulos interview only reinforced what we saw the week before. As Democrats, we collectively hold our breath or turn down the volume whenever we see the president, whom we respect, walk off Air Force One or walk back to a mic to answer an unscripted question. Is it fair to point these things out? It has to be. This is about age, nothing more, but also nothing that can be reversed. We are not going to win in November with this president. There it is, folks, just right out the gate. On top of that, we won't win the House and we're going to lose the Senate. This isn't only my opinion. This is the opinion of every senator and Congress member and governor who I've spoken with in private. Every single one, irrespective of what he or she is saying publicly. So when I read this, the first thing I said to myself is, really, George Clooney? Isn't George Clooney really good friends with Joe Biden and Barack Obama? Obviously, I think we know that Joe Biden wouldn't write this or say this about himself. But I also am smart enough to realize that George Clooney may be the face of this op-ed, but I think the writer and the mind of this op-ed is Barack Obama. Think about it for a second. Why would Barack Obama make himself the face of this statement? That would ruin his legacy. And we all know how much Obama seems to care about his legacy. It also wouldn't be good for him in social political circles, which he is still very much a part of. Probably wouldn't be too great for his kids either, even though they're adults. I believe Barack Obama got George Clooney to write this op-ed. It's just a little too personal. All of the senators that I spoke to, not to say George Clooney doesn't know any senators, but this sounds like Barack Obama. You mean to tell me out of nowhere, this actor just shows up and goes, oh, let me just write this op-ed about da-da-da. I think this is Barack Obama once again working behind the scenes. A way to get his voice out there without showing his face so that you don't tie it to his face. But it sounds just like him. It also reminds me of a time when Joe Biden was running for president in 2020, where Barack Obama told Joe Biden, you don't have to do this, Joe. Even back then, this was not his first choice. Obama knew even in 2020 that Joe Biden wasn't still completely with it. So I believe Obama is behind the George Clooney op-ed. And he put George Clooney up to this, make him the face of it because he's an actor. He's not a politician. So it's not really going to hurt him in the way that it would someone who's a politician or a former politician, particularly someone who's a former president of the United States. So Obama is not going to put his face out in the front. Nice try, Obama. Even Morning Joe didn't fall for this. Even Morning Joe is calling this out. That's when you know you messed up. Listen to this.
Say one thing that we do have to underline here, just so viewers can follow what's going on behind the scenes, is the Biden campaign and many Democratic officials do believe that Barack Obama is quietly working behind the scenes to orchestrate this. Again,
this wasn't George Clooney.
But what do you mean?
It just wasn't. Come on.
What? Who do you think it was? Matt Damon?
It was not Matt Damon.
Who do you think it was?
It wasn't Julia Roberts either.
Who do you think it was? You can say the name. You won't melt. It's not Voldemort. Are you saying you think Barack Obama put him up to this?
I think that Barack Obama has a lot of influence, and I think that there's a lot there.
There you go. So again, here's George Clooney, Joe Biden. There's Jennifer. Why'd I call her Jennifer? Julia Roberts. I'm sorry. Damn. And there's Barack Obama, right? All these people are friends. So this is what I was saying. Even Morning Joe can spot it. You see this?
There's a lot there.
There's a lot there.
There is a lot there, Willie.
I'll tell you, there were two people in this picture, and one has had a presidency that was absolutely, undeniably historic.
Yeah. Well, I think you have two people that had extraordinarily
I'm sorry.
presidencies.
Historic in terms of legislative accomplishments.
Well, like you say, and
they're both historic.
And they're both historic. And Barack Obama,
for sure.
Affordable Care Act, George.
Now they're trying to kiss ass. So we'll move on from that. But I think we all know what's really going on here behind the scenes. Now we pivot to Nancy Pelosi. And this is another thing, because I'm going to show you how they're making chess moves behind the scenes too, but actually kind of publicly, but I want to show you this as well. When Nancy Pelosi, when she is confronted here and she is asked about whether or not Joe Biden should stay in this race, when you listen to her response, I want you to remember that. Remember, Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House. Listen to what she said.
Let me play first what we heard just now from the former House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, this morning about President Biden. Let's listen.
I want him to do whatever he decides to do. And that's the way it is. Whatever he decides, we go with. I think it's really important, and I would hope everyone would join in, to let him deal with this NATO conference. This is a very big deal. Over 30 heads of state are here. He is the host of it, and that means not just hosting, it means orchestrating the discussion and setting the agenda, and he's doing so magnificently. And I've said to everyone, let's just hold off. Whatever you're thinking, either tell somebody privately, but you don't have to put that out on the table until we see how we go this week.
So notice she said, let's see how it goes this week. Nancy Pelosi was not willing to give her unconditional support for Joe Biden to stay in office. Former Speaker of the House. She was, at one point, when she was still Speaker of the House, she was third in line. Heavily backed Joe Biden, constantly defended Joe Biden's presidency, but now Nancy Pelosi is not willing to give Joe Biden a guaranteed yes or support, and let's go for it. So does everybody see how people kind of line up behind the leadership or former leadership? Hakeem Jeffries is saying something different publicly. He still supports Joe Biden, of course. You know, Hakeem is playing the game. He's a careerist. He knows what he's doing. So there's that. But then you have some that are in the middle, like Nancy Pelosi, like, oh, let's just wait and see, but still won't announce support for Joe Biden. And then you have those like Michael Bennett is like, I don't think you're going to beat Trump. He won't win. We're going to lose the House and the Senate.
Jeff, what do you hear in that? I mean, Pelosi saying, I want him to decide and do whatever he decides to do. I mean, we have heard what Joe Biden says he has decided to do, but what do you hear from Speaker Pelosi? And what are you hearing in Michael Bennett coming out publicly to say that he doesn't think Biden can win?
Hey, Kate, good morning. If you unpack what Speaker Pelosi is saying there, it's actually quite interesting. She is saying that hold off. No one should make any proclamations, at least publicly, to the Michael Bennetts and others of the world. But she's also saying, let's see how this week goes. Let's see how the NATO summit goes. Let's see how the rest of the week goes. And that includes, what does polling show? So, Kate, I am told that Democrats really are in a state of disbelief over how this has played out, but particularly they're keeping their eyes on some swing states. What is the data showing this week? So if you listen to what former Speaker Pelosi, who is as close and as sharp of a reader as polls and the dynamic as really anyone in the party, she is saying, let's take a breath and hold off. But what she did not say is try to really quiet the conversation and that Biden is all in. She said it's up to President Biden. So it was pretty extraordinary there. And of course, I'm thinking back now, just watching those comments made just a few minutes ago on Morning Joe, what she said last week. She really framed the conversation around President Biden's performance at the debate, asking publicly, was that an episode or a condition? So I think this is the latest sort of words of wisdom or lessons to her party, saying it's up to President Biden, but hold off for now.
Let's go ahead and stop it there. And I want to bring up another one as well with Nancy Pelosi, because that wasn't the end of it. She was approached in the hallway by a reporter, and I want you to see her response here. Listen to this.
Do you believe that him waiting so long to make this decision?
I'm not going to make any comments in the hallway about the fate of our nation. Okay?
Are you concerned whether or not he can win in November?
I think he can.
Do you believe he should run for re-election?
I'm not speaking English to you.
Uh-oh, there goes the cockiness and the attitude coming out there. Am I speaking English to you? Ooh, there it comes out, right? She's like, oh, I think he can win in November. You think he can win in November, but she was not willing to give her support behind him. She was not willing to say, yes, I support the president. He's our nominee. You're going to see the difference between the way that Nancy Pelosi responded and the way that AOC responded. And I'm going to tell you what I think is happening here.
I'm not going to be making any statements about any of that right now in the hallway.
Do you believe that him?
And that was that. So again, I think it is very telling that Nancy Pelosi was not willing to give her unconditional support behind Joe Biden. Now, AOC, on the other hand, totally different situation. And I want to bring up this video because I want to show you the difference. And then I'm going to explain to you what I think is happening here. Remember what I told you about the political careerists, the people who are just trying to make a career out of this in DC. Listen to this.
What I have to say about this matter. I have spoken to the president over the weekend. I have spoken with him extensively. He made clear then, and he has made clear since, that he is.
Sorry.
I have spoken to the president over the weekend. I have spoken with him extensively. He made clear then, and he has made clear since, that he is in this race. The matter is closed. He had reiterated that this morning. He has reiterated that to the public. Joe Biden is our nominee.
The matter is closed. Joe Biden is our nominee. I want you to compare that to what Nancy Pelosi said when she said, let's see how this week goes.
He is not leaving this race. He is in this race, and I support him. Now, what I think is critically important right now is that we focus on what it takes to win in November.
Everybody see what's happening here, right? You see what's happening here? You see this shift, this dynamic that's happening. So she publicly said she supports Joe Biden. Nancy Pelosi was not willing to do that. Let me let her finish and I'll tell you what I think she's doing.
Because he is running against Donald Trump, who is a man with 34 felony convictions that has committed 34 felony crimes, and not a single Republican has asked for Donald Trump to not be the nominee. I'm here to win on this democracy. I'm here to win in November. And what's critically important is what the president, I believe that the president needs to do, and I have communicated this, what the president and the White House should do in order to make sure that we win in November. And that is making sure that we pivot and working and increasingly commit to the issues that are critically important to working people across this country. How are we going to expand Medicare? How are we going to expand Social Security? How are we going to provide relief to people's rent and more?
Pause. Did everybody hear what she said about Medicare? Let's go back. Listen.
The president and the White House should do in order to make sure that we win in November. And that is making sure that we pivot and working and increasingly commit to the issues that are critically important to working people across this country. How are we going to expand Medicare? How are we?
So once upon a time, it was Medicare for all, and now it is expanding Medicare. Everybody see how that works? I told you it had been quite some time since she had mentioned Medicare for all. I told you that she was moving away, not just her, but members of the squad were moving away from Medicare for all. I told you how they dismissed the activists. Those of us that were at the Medicare for all marches, all of these politicians were contacted for those events. They were all across the country. So notice again how as time went on, she slowly stopped talking about Medicare for all, moved away from it. I don't want to be part of these marches, yada, yada. And now, instead of Medicare for all, it's expanding Medicare. That is not the same thing. I don't want people to be confused by this type of political jargon. Expanding Medicare and Medicare for all are not the same thing. This is not the same woman that ran for office in 2018. This is not the same woman. She is a part of the Democrat establishment, and she's been slowly making her way to that side. And I remember calling this out years ago. What, 3 years ago? 3 years ago, when I was paying attention to the way she was voting on legislation. And people were telling me I was too hard on the squad, that I need to be nicer to them, give them the time, give them a chance. That's what people said to me. I was right about AOC. I saw exactly what she was doing. And now we've gone from Medicare to all to expanded Medicare. Joe Biden is our nominee. That's the end of it, she says.
Expand Social Security. How are we going to provide relief to people's rent and mortgages? And if we can do that and continue our work on student loans, secure a ceasefire, and bring those dollars back into investing in public policy, then that's how we win in November. That's what I'm committed to, and that's what I want to make sure that we
Well, what do you say to members who say they need to see more from the president?
Well, that is all up to their own individual, determination. I respect everyone's opinion, but I'm here to make sure that we win in November, and that's my focus.
And what about young voters? What about
Everybody see what's happening here. This was a chess move by AOC. This was AOC one-upping Nancy Pelosi. You have the former Speaker of the House who was not willing to say, I support Joe Biden and he's our nominee, end of it. But AOC was. I told you years ago that she is the future Nancy Pelosi. So this was AOC who took that moment that she got from the press to show I'm going to go stronger and harder and committed than all the others because she wants to continue her political career. She wants to grow within the party. I predict maybe 2 years from now, she'll run for Senate, then eventually president of the United States. This is a political move, guys. That's what she did. You guys all know Joe's not with it. You guys all know. I saw earlier a small clip of it before I went live. Joe Biden called Vladimir Zelensky. He called him Putin, and he was standing right next to him at the NATO conference. I saw that part. I didn't get to see the rest of it. So does everybody see what's happening here? Now, for those of you wondering, why is it okay for some people to come forward and publicly say that they think Joe Biden should step down? Because the money is moving, because the donors are not wanting to donate to a Biden campaign because they don't think that he can win and they don't like his performance. Obviously, the debate and more since then, the interview as well. It always leads back to the money. The donors control the politicians. The lobbyists control the politicians. So if you can follow that trail, then you'll understand why things are the way that they are. Once the donors started speaking out and saying, I don't know if I want to donate to this, I'm going to pull my money and start donating in other places, then it seemed to be okay for people to publicly come forward and say, I think Joe Biden should step down. The donor class controls it all. Now, I just want to show you this because I want a little reminder. Let me copy this. I want you to listen to the conversation that was on CNN earlier about some people supporting Biden and some Democrats choosing not to. Listen to this.
Joe Biden was not progressive's first choice back in 2020. There was a very divisive primary. I mean, Bernie and Biden were going at it up until the end, and AOC had endorsed Bernie in his presidential race. And I think now when we're seeing a lot of moderates and Democrats running in competitive races coming out against Biden now, progressives are taking a step back and saying, Biden was not our first choice. This is not necessarily our mess to clean up. That moderates are the ones who are really, leading this charge, and let's let them kind of take this mantle. But I think bigger than that, progressives have found an ally in Joe Biden, that they have had a great working relationship with him over his first term. They have moved Biden to the left on a number of key policies. I mean, like the child tax credit, getting Biden to be the first president on a picket line. I mean, the Inflation Reduction Act. These are big progressive values and policies that Biden has come around on and really given progressives an ear in the West Wing. So when AOC and Bernie both said they had calls with Biden over the weekend and came out so strong in support, a lot of other progressive offices took note of that and kind of are following this playbook laid out by the two of them.
This goes back to what I said before. People are following Bernie Sanders and AOC's lead, at least those that consider themselves to be progressives. But I got to say this. I have to correct her here. There are no progressives in Congress. Everyone say it with me. There are no progressives in Congress. This phrase that people have created where they say progressive except for Palestine, there's no such thing. A progressive is not progressive except for Palestine. And that is what we have right now. So these people that ran as progressives initially, if you look at the way that they have voted on legislation, you will see that these people are not progressive. It is not progressive to support the Iron Dome. It is not progressive to say that Israel has a right to defend itself. It is not progressive to go against the BDS movement. It is not progressive to go against the railroad workers when they are trying to go on strike. Now you're going against labor. There are no progressives in Congress. Does everybody understand that? I want to be very clear about that. What you now have are people who ran as progressives initially that have just become a part of the establishment Democrats who were there before them. They have followed Democrat leadership and they are doing their will. And the reason why people like AOC and I think Ilhan Omar has also said she's supporting Joe Biden is because they already saw what happened to Jamal Bowman. They want to try to keep their seat because they want to continue their political career. Even though when AOC was running initially, she said she didn't care if she was a one-term congresswoman. Apparently that was not true. Once she got in there, once she saw all the bells and whistles and everything that comes with this gig, she decided she didn't want to give that up. Didn't want to give it up at all. Now, some people say, well, what about Rashida Tlaib? Rashida, I think it was good that she started or advocated for that uncommitted campaign. I think that's great. But even Rashida Tlaib is not sending those people who are uncommitted to a choice of someone who does support the Palestinian people and their fight and their struggle. She's not sending them towards any of the other candidates that are correct on that issue. She still wants them to hold out and wait for Joe Biden to do something and then keep them in the Democratic Party. Now, you got a district right there with you in Dearborn, Michigan, where the people love you. You could leave the Democratic Party today and be an independent and your people will still back you. So why are you still there? Political ambitions. We'll go on a little bit more here.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way to set it up that they now have a friend in the White House and they're going to try to stand by him. One also interesting kind of aspect of this. So Adam Smith, one of the congressmen who has called on Biden to step aside, pointed out that while Joe Biden is out there saying, I beat Trump before, that's why I should be here. That's not actually why necessarily he ended up consolidating support for the nomination back in 2020. Let's watch Adam Smith.
Look, the talent in the Democratic Party, this myth that only Joe Biden could have beaten Donald Trump. And I've said this over and over again. Joe Biden was not picked in 2020.
Oh, we'll get back to that. I don't want to bring that up just yet. We'll get back to that. In fact, I think I have that clip. Yeah, that's for the next story. Sorry about that, guys. But the point that I want to make is that it is very obvious what is happening here. Eric, we can go ahead and bring up the second screen. It's very obvious what's happening here. a lot of the moderate Democrats that are coming forward that are saying that they want him to step down, those are people that know they're already safe. They've probably been in Congress for quite some time. And again, they're not going to get rid of all of them. So they did essentially form a coup. I mean, they're not going to get rid of all of these people. There is strength in numbers. But AOC took this as her moment to shine. To basically say, you know what? This is my chance to show the Democratic Party that I can follow their lead and that, you know, I could be a senator and so much more. And the reality is she's showing people, the Democrat leadership, that she knows how to play the game. Nancy Pelosi probably has, another 2 years? Then she'll pave the way for her daughter to come into Congress. She's a future Nancy Pelosi in the making, but I think that Joe Biden is done. I think that op-ed from George Clooney is really from Barack Obama. I think that Joe is done, son.